Welcome again to another episode of One Another Marriage with Dr. David and Teresa Mabry, where we seek to strengthen marriages in order to have greater satisfaction and impact on the world around you. That's our agenda, and we hope that's what you get out of this podcast that we have together.
Hey, everyone. Hope everybody's doing great today or tonight or this afternoon, whenever you're listening, whatever part of the day
on
that
your
you're
time schedule
listening to our podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. So over time, some relationships find themselves in a rough place. Sometimes things are just going in the wrong direction. Now, although unhealthy marriages seldom turn around overnight, there are some behaviors that can help flip the switch for if you find yourself in one of these struggling relationships. Today, we're going to explore 5 things you can do as a couple to turn things around and move towards an ongoing journey of health and vibrancy.
And this is a very real issue, right? I mean,
It is.
We coach couples on a regular basis, and this is one of those things that, and actually this podcast spurs out of some of those conversations, is saying, they're headed one direction, and they really desire.
Not to be confused with the band One Direction.
Thank you very much, Teresa Mabry. They're headed in one direction that is not healthy, and they don't have a very high satisfaction. But they both this is kind of for a couple that they want to do better.
Yeah, they strive to be better. They have this vision in their brain that they desire a healthy marriage, and I think for some it catches them off guard that they aren't having a healthy marriage, like that they are struggling. And then they just kind of get going in that same trajectory, and then the struggle becomes turning the car around or turning the ship around and trying to head back towards that avenue of health and vitality.
Maybe you're listening today and you find yourself right there. But before we dive into it,
yes,
I'm excited about the shout out.
We have a shout out. That's right.
Shout out
so we so appreciate all of our listeners from all over the world.
Which, by the way, we've done all these shout outs.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard from anyone saying, hey, you gave us a shout out.
I know.
We're trying to give you every opportunity, folks.
Yes.
You know how to get a hold of us.
Please.
info@oneanothermarriage.org.
Right.
Or through our website or Facebook page.
Right.
You can communicate to us.
Yes. And we will not, maybe there's fear in there that we're going to spam them or something. I don't know. Like we just want to hear from you. We won't, we will send back a friendly hello and thank you, but we will not inundate you.
Just want to know, especially Paris, France.
Right.
I'm dying to know. It's like Paris, France, and where in Germany did we say? It's like here's consistent. Our international, which we've given these shout outs. Internationally, Paris, France, Germany, South Africa, and we've had this onslaught of Oceania, and Asia.
Asia.
And so we're getting more and more listeners there in those areas. Right. And then once again, I'm kind of reviewing some shout outs because
evidently you are. Because listen, this is what happens, folks. I'm supposed to be doing the shout out, and all of a sudden David has just hijacked the shout out.
I do want to say this though.
No, seriously, go
because
ahead.
We're going to make a big announcement at the end, and so it's important. And you'll understand when we make the announcement at the end, we're going to. This will make sense a little bit more to kind of review some shout outs. I have to say though, places like Centennial, Colorado, you are showing up large and in charge. And Centennial
Grove City, Ohio.
Yeah, Grove City, Ohio, of course, Columbus, Ohio. But then Centennial sits between Denver and Colorado Springs, or the Springs, as they say, out in Colorado. So anyhow, those are highlighted shout outs, but today we have a special one, right?
Is that my turn? Am I ready?
I got so excited.
I know.
The shout out is one of my favorite parts.
It is. It's a good thing.
Do you
it
know
was
why?
good. And
These
full
are
disclosure,
yeah.
it was David's idea. David's
Thank
idea
you. I did not need credit, but
to do the
I'll
shots.
take it.
No, for most of the
Take
things
it.
that we do, David's the big picture guy. He's the one that like
But,
thinks through all this, and then I go, "Yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do it."
But Teresa Mabry executes the vision fantastically.
You don't have. It doesn't mean that you need to come back and give me a compliment. I gave you a compliment. You don't have to come back and give me a compliment.
That's my love language.
Yeah, I know. Not mine. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah.
How may I serve you? By just letting you speak. Go. It's your turn. Do the shout out.
So shout out for today. Holy cow.
The people are like, we're
shout out
almost
for
6 minutes in.
Because this podcast is the one dropping on November 2nd.
November 2nd.
Of 2021. Wow.
Yeah.
So shout out for November 2nd is, we've mentioned all these places that are far away. This one, right here in our little old.
Right here in River City.
Right. Oh boy. Right here. So we are actually going just slightly north of us, of where we are located, to Delaware, Ohio. So
Yeah.
Delaware, Ohio, and specifically any of the peeps that are from New Start Church, which is our home church in Delaware County of Delaware, Ohio.
Yeah.
And so we want to give a shout out and a big thank you to all of you who attend New Start and listen or have caught our podcast. We so appreciate it, as well as some of the listeners we have in Delaware, Ohio.
I tell you what, this is a special shout out because this has been our church family since 2018. That's when I stopped being a senior pastor at a church, and we went in the direction of marriage ministry. But we will give, with the shout out, we'll just tell you, New Start staff and leadership are fabulous. It is one of the best places that we've ever seen for church. And then also, we must include in here, Teresa and I work with a wonderful team, a ministry team for marriages at New Start. And so there's a group of couples that are coaches, marriage coaches, that we've had the privilege of working with. And several couples have worked with those marriage coaches. And so, shout out to, we won't put them all on the spot by naming them, but they all know exactly who they are.
Right. Excellent. All right. So there we go. That's our shout out for today. And now you, sir, can have the floor again. Should I?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you're going to do a puzzle or if you're going to do an appreciation or you're going to do, I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not either.
Okay.
I'm supposed to do the puzzle.
Yeah.
And the reason we do puzzles, once again, for those couples that maybe this is the first podcast you're catching of ours. And what we do is we want couples to touch base about things that are beyond just business or even ignoring one another. That's not an option.
Right.
But to be able to turn to one another and just, it's a good talking point. And so kind of daily, being able to, as much as possible, you have the habit of turning to one another and say, hey, I have a puzzle, not about your partner, but about something to let them in on your brain. And so we like to start the podcast with a shout out and a puzzle. So
do you have a puzzle then?
Well, I'll throw this out here. I want to do a puzzle because I have a lot of puzzles that have cropped up recently because we now have Denali in our lives. Denali is our new puppy dog, and
we have had her specifically for 20 days.
You have it down to the days? 20 days.
20 days. 21 days.
21 days.
Yeah.
How cool, 3 weeks in.
It feels like we've had her a lot longer, doesn't it? But
it does.
But it's only been 21 days.
And that shows that we're down to a pattern, right?
Yeah.
We have our schedule down, and she is fabulous. We just love her. And so she's hairy, and
she is.
she gets lots of hair all over the place, but she's a fabulous dog. My puzzle is some of her behaviors, and I don't send us messages like, well, David, this is the explanation for this puzzle. But it's just a puzzle that I kind of understand, but it's interesting. So for right now, for instance, she's in her crate, whereas she was going ballistic in her crate. We're still training her with her crate. She was going ballistic when we were eating our dinner.
Right.
And then we take the sheet back. She can see us. We interact. she chills out.
Right.
What is it? And this puzzle, when I figure it out, it'll help me with training. What is it that's causing her now to be chill, like when we're even recording this, and then she's not chill, like earlier during dinner. So
Right.
it's her behaviors like that are
Right.
a puzzle to me, and I think I'm trying to figure them out. Well, one of the things I figured them out is that we are firm believers that a tired dog is a good dog.
Absolutely.
And so we wear
It's like a
Denali.
child. Tired child's a good child.
Come on, kid. Run another lap.
You got to stimulate the brain and the body.
That is funny because I do remember, like, when the kids were younger, like,
Right?
one that will remain nameless, that is not a female, that we would say.
Oh, we
we'd
just
say,
narrowed it down.
run around the house.
Yeah.
Run around the house 5 times.
5 times.
Or, hey, I'm going to time you around the house.
Right.
And a lot of the agenda was wearing them out. So.
Wearing them out. That's right. You gotta have enough going on and just interactive and different things. So yeah.
Yep.
So it's true though, because like when we eat, we're in a separate room from where the crate is, so she can't see us.
Because we don't
But
want
she
her at
heard
the
us.
table.
Right.
Our rule is dogs are not at the table or near the
Right.
table during dinner, during
And-
people eating time.
But then, like, when we were done and you walked back through, that was when she settled. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I see you now. And now she's just laying there, and we left the light on in the room, and we are now in a different room recording,
And who
and
knows?
she's still quiet.
She may not make it.
So, I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah,
We're
we
going to see
will.
if she makes it. Well, we're not going to make it if we don't jump right into things here. And so that's our shout out and our puzzle. And
Awesome.
hey, so let's return back to this. We're going to mention 5 action points.
Mm-hmm.
By no means is this an exhaustive list
Right.
of action points, but these are just the ones that are kind of come top of mind for Teresa and myself with when it comes to turning around
Right.
a
To move
struggling
yourself.
relationship. When a relationship is struggling, it's to move forward. And there are 5 action steps to turn your marriage around. And it's with intent to say, we want to do this. Now, some of these couples may be those that are like, we really seriously don't know if we're going to make it if we
Mhm.
don't do something.
Right.
And others are like, well, we think we're going to make it, but we're not happy. We're
Right.
not satisfied. It's like, and you're like, do we really have to go our whole lives unsatisfied, unhappy with this relationship? Something has to give.
Yeah.
So maybe you're in that situation. So these things, and then now listen, folks, if you're also listening and you aren't struggling, don't tune out. Don't be like, hey, you know what? We're good right now. We just listen to Mabry's because it's encouraging, but don't tune out if you don't feel like you're totally going in the wrong direction, because maybe there may be some things that you're going to pick up from this that will be helpful. So I will mention them. I'll lead through them, the 5, and then we'll process these a little bit. So how about I run them past you and we'll
Okay.
see. So action point number 1, we would say it's for you to turn your relationship around is to seek counseling, seek marriage counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And to be perfectly clear, this is meant to deal with past hurts, pains, and woundedness. Now, our action point number 2 in a minute is going to come in and show kind of something that feels similar, but we want all of our one another couples to know very clearly there's a difference between counseling and coaching, and we're going to talk about that.
Right.
But counseling deals with, if your relationship is struggling with hurts, pains, and woundedness, then marriage counseling really is for you. Now, they can teach you skills and coping mechanisms, and that does happen.
Right.
But that's really the purpose for counseling. But if we do anything by bringing this up, it's to destigmatize marriage counseling.
Yeah. Right. And getting help.
Get help.
Yeah.
You cannot do it on your own. You find someone that can help you, and there are wonderful marriage counselors that are out there.
Right. And along with that, then, we would also encourage you to find several different counselors and even go through a process of interviewing them. And that can even be through, email, could be by phone. Just have some of those questions, that you want to know. We do when we have couples reach out to us, we do what's called an intake. And in the intake, we hear from them what's going on, what brought them to us, what are some of their goals, and then they can ask us any questions that they want to ask, right? And sometimes couples don't always know what to ask, and so we'll share a little bit, about ourselves, what we do, things like that, and then that'll prompt usually some other things. But yeah, don't be afraid to, if you need to seek out a counselor, then you need to make sure as a couple that you find the best fit for you. And
Yep.
we encourage all of our couples that we see, if someone's in individual counseling, which we, talk about with the health of the couple as well, that just because you start with somebody doesn't mean you have to finish with them. So sometimes it takes a couple of different tries before you find the right person for you. So do that. And in so doing, make sure that this counselor is pro-marriage.
Yes.
You have to make sure they're pro-marriage, because if they're not, if they literally are going to sit there with you and look at you both and then just say, well, I mean, if this doesn't work out or you choose not to do these things, then, divorce is an option for you and you can do that.
We cannot emphasize that enough, right, hon?
Yeah.
That can be underlined, exclamation,
Right.
bolded, find. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Right.
Find a counselor that's going to be pro-marriage. If
Yeah.
you find someone, especially now, if you're dealing also with some really challenging issues like infidelity, we still would emphasize heavily find pro-marriage counseling, because you don't want someone, like you said, hon, well put, you don't want to find someone that goes in there and says, well, one option is you're not being fulfilled in this relationship and you need to just split from one another.
Right.
It's like, no.
Or maybe this person isn't your soulmate or whatever, because that's all just blah, blah, blah. That's
Leave that counselor if they're
blah,
not
blah, blah.
if they're not pro-marriage.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that great questions to ask are you pro-marriage? Great questions to ask.
That should be one of your questions.
That's right. I think also what will go on in sessions. How do you process? What does a session look like? A lot of times people are just asking how much it costs and blah, blah. How you're going to ask about frequency of meeting, but you want to ask things that like what happens in the what we hear feedback from couples sometimes is that, hey, when we went to counseling, the counselor took the side of my spouse,
right?
Or I felt ganged up on,
right?
And so you got to find out whether the counselor, if you're dealing with an individual, if they are if they're balanced in their help, if they are going to help both of you at the same time. So I would say too, I want to make sure that we hit this, is that when you go see a counselor, if you want to turn your marriage around, do what you learn. Do things that when you come out of a session, it can't just simply be, I've emptied the emotional jug and that's it.
Right.
Although that can be healthy and helpful, you're going to be given, hopefully you find a counselor who's going to give you some things to do between sessions to help move toward health and healing.
Right.
And do those things. We've had people tell us, well, I went to counseling and it really didn't work. And our line is always, well, did you work it?
Did you work?
Did it not work, or did you
That's right.
not work it?
Yeah.
You've got to work counseling, just like
Right.
you got to work coaching.
Which that phrase right there, do what you're learning, applies into our second action point.
Yeah, which would be find a marriage coach.
Okay.
And so find a marriage coach. So you can find a counseling, or you can find coaching, or you can do both.
Correct.
And now the difference between the two is marriage coaching is meant to teach skills that help you achieve your goals. Some of you are headed in kind of an unhealthy direction. You're unsatisfied with your relationship, but you may not necessarily need healing from past hurts, wounds, and pain. But you may be like, you know what? We're not figuring out on how we're doing it ourselves. We just don't have the skills, and we need someone to help teach us those skills and help coach us towards success. Not unlike an athlete who needs their head coach or their position coach to teach them how to play to the best of their ability, to prepare well,
Right.
to execute well, to perform well, so they can have victory. that's what marriage coaches do as well, which we've covered in other podcasts. So we won't belabor the point, but we want to hit upon it. It's not intended to walk clients through past hurts and pains.
Right. Which is the difference between the counseling and the coaching.
That's right.
But with a coach as well, interview the coach. Make sure you understand what will be covered in sessions, or what will be the format, or are they skills based at all? Are they just going to have you come in and talk, or will you actually learn things that you can, practical tips and suggestions? And then once again, if they do give you skills, or they want you to read a certain book together or listen to a certain podcast or whatever it is, you've got to do what you learn. Okay. You just can't sit there for a 60-minute session, walk out, and then, okay, now what? Never put the action points on it. So, and then once again, just make sure that marriage coach is also pro-marriage. I mean, and you need to both agree on which coach you choose.
One of you can't be like, hey, I really want us to go to this, and the other one, whatever.
Yeah.
You've got to be a one accord.
Got to be a one accord, right? And then finally, we get this question a lot, of course, because our lane that we stay in is the marriage coaching. And so there's always the question about the financial commitment, right? Towards counseling or coaching. Sometimes with a counselor, you can find insurance, but a lot of times you may be paying out of pocket. And so, our contingency is always invest in your marriage. And you may have to, spend a little bit to invest in your marriage. And if you really break it down, we spend money going towards so many other avenues and things in our life that have nothing to do with building our marriage, right? So just understand that, yes, there will be a financial commitment to this, and that it's worth it because it invests in your marriage. Because guess what? Divorce is so much more expensive.
In so many ways.
So many ways, right?
Financially, for sure.
Yeah. But relationally, emotionally, mentally,
children involved. Children involved. Oh, it's horrific, and it's hurtful. And many of you listening have experienced that hurt and pain of a parent being parents going through divorce.
Right. And some of our listeners, you may have experienced divorce yourself, and you're on a second marriage in your life, and we have over the years talked with so many who that is their story, and they concur that yes, it caused major expense in all different areas of their life,
which we do not condemn.
Those
who have experienced it. By the way, we want to make super clear. We just want to make sure everyone knows, hey, if you are struggling with the financial investment into counseling or coaching, then check yourself and say, well, hold on, what's the alternative?
Right.
Divorce could be the alternative.
Exactly.
Or neglect to it. The question comes back to, I'm so glad you hit on this, is that what is marital health and happiness worth?
Exactly.
What is it worth to you? And you know what? I'd say if you need to spend a few $100, a few $1,000 on help from an outside source, then by golly, do that. That is so much worth it. Now, the beauty of us encouraging on this one is the vast majority of people listening to the podcast right now will not call David and Teresa Mabry and hire us as your coaches. We are open to that. We definitely will always make ourselves available to those that we can. But the beauty of this encouragement is we're not trying to sell ourselves right now.
Right.
We're trying to help you connect with whoever you may be able to and invest in that. And the reason why this is also a hot topic with us is because we've had a good handful of couples who have really connected with us. We've done an intake with them. They really need help. And then when they find out how much marriage coaching costs and that we don't take insurance, they're like, oh, bummer.
Right.
And it's like, well, is there any way we can get scholarshiped or free? It's like, well, what is your marriage worth, people?
Yeah.
What is it worth? And we're not trying to get rich on this. what is your marriage worth? And when you bring on counselor or coaches, it's well worth the financial investment.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So action point then number 3.
Action point number 3 is, hey, here's something you can do on your own, and that is discuss a marriage book together or follow a podcast like ours together. So you listen together to the podcast or read the book together, and then you discuss it together. So do something proactive. And if your marriage is unhealthy and if it's not going well right now, it's more than likely you are not doing something like this. You're taking a resource. We just said book or podcast because those are hot items that are seem a little bit more obvious. You may find another resource out there, an app or a website or a program, but you find a resource and then the two of you say, you know what, we're working on this together and make a commitment to it, make a plan, commit to the plan, give yourself grace, do it for a time frame. You don't have to go forever, but do it for a time frame and then invest in your marriage, but do it together. Do it together.
Well, and when we say do it together, and when you're thinking of a time frame, I mean, a time frame could just be you're going to try it for 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks, you're going to do this. Like, it doesn't have to be this, like, okay, for the next year, for 2022, right? So just do it for a couple of weeks. And when we say do it together, it doesn't have to be done simultaneously, right at the same time together. Let's say that it is a podcast. Let's say it's a book that you're sharing, and so for a book that you're sharing, you read a chapter, or you read a little bit, right, and then you put the bookmark in, and then it gets you have a place where in the house where when the book makes it back to that place, then the other partner takes it and reads it, and then you come together for dialogue. Right.
Yeah.
Then you go to the next chapter, right? Yeah. So it doesn't mean now. It could mean that you sit down and one of you is reading out loud to the other one. I don't know.
Or one listens in their car as they commute.
Exactly.
And to an audio version.
Maybe it's
and
audio.
the other one's sitting down. You go based on, don't be legalistic.
Right.
But
have a structure so that one person doesn't like, hey, I couldn't help it. I just read all of it. And the other one's like, oh, I barely got chapter 1 in, because then we were misaligned again. Yeah. And if you're already struggling, that just puts another like dart through the dartboard, right? Of just like, one person's feeling like they're not measuring up in the relationship. So be very clear about your expectations of how much you're going to do at one time, and then you're going to come back and you're going to just have dialogue about it. And it's okay for each person to have their own expressed opinion about it. It's not meant for you to be like, well, no, I think the chapter meant this. No, I think it meant this. No, it's truly just to hear from each other. There doesn't need to be any other resolution with that chapter. But as time goes on, and if it's a book you're digesting or if it's a podcast and you each determine, hey, we're going to listen to this podcast, we're going to take this episode, and, by the end of the week, you need to have listened to it, and then we're going to come back and have, what was your highlights from it?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and there's some great books out there, by the way.
Absolutely. And we have done multiple
that's right.
segments and videos on that. So
and to that point, let's point folks to, really want to encourage you, go to our YouTube channel, and we have a couple videos there on books that we suggest, and watch those. That's a good place for you to start. So we will not cover them all right now, but you can find great authors like John Gottman is one of those. Chapman, Gary Chapman. So it's like you can use the 5 love languages, and he's also written some other items as well. And so there's so many that are out there. Anything else come to your mind as far as a book that you would say, hey, you know what, actually this is one that other than what they would find on our...
No, I mean, like the vast supply. I mean, we have endless right now sitting in our on the bookshelves right here right now. But our I don't have my glasses on. So, but there's an endless supply. And even with like the podcast, when I scroll through different marriage podcasts, there's so many, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but find one, and there's so many different lanes you can stay in. If you want to be in a certain a lane or maybe a topic, then do your search based upon that topic.
Yeah.
And
the key being,
so many things will come up.
Key being is that you're doing it together, and it's another podcast for us to deal with. Because I know some folks are out there listening, and you're saying, actually, I want to do something to turn our marriage around, but my partner does not. And so we want to really encourage you. That's another podcast that we plan on doing, on talking about, okay, what happens if you want to change your marriage, but you're the only one that wants to do something. Then we have some suggestions for that. And some of these things you can do on your own to help speak life and vibrancy in the meantime.
And this would be one. This action point we're talking about is one you can do even as a healthy couple. If you're one of those couples listening right now that you're like, yeah, we're doing really well. This is something that just kind of like gives a shot in the arm.
Yeah.
To just doing the same old,
yeah.
right? So
yeah,
okay,
exactly. Well, action item number 4. Action item number 4 is a fun one, and that is surround yourself with couples you want to be like. So find mentor couples, informally, friends who have healthy marriages, or at least they have realistic they're headed in a positive direction.
Right.
They may not be perfect, because there is no perfect couple, but surround yourself with positive people. Research shows that you become like the people you surround yourself with. So, if you want to give up smoking, one of the things that helps, not exclusively, because that's a tough habit to break, but hang out with people that don't smoke. If you want to lose weight or you want to get in shape, hang out with people who are in shape and that are working on their health as well. On the opposite, if you want to pick up bad habits, then hang out with people bad habits.
Exactly.
If you want to have negativity towards your marriage, hang around people who are negative about marriage.
Right.
If you want to have struggles in your marriage, then go hang out with people who also want to gripe and complain and struggle in their marriage. And so we would encourage, find positive people to be around. And you know what? Also strive to be, as much as possible, be the positive people for others as well. But relationships are so important with other couples who can support you in your journey to turn things around.
Absolutely. And once again, you want to find those couples that are pro-marriage again, right? And not just like tooling along like, okay, this is just what you do, right? But find people who are pro-marriage. There's some people that are pro-marriage, and I don't know that they even realize how pro-marriage they are, right?
Yeah.
Like no one's ever used that terminology necessarily with them. But, neighbors that are nearby, you may have neighbors that maybe you don't know them on a very deep, intimate level, but, start up some of those conversations and ask. When you ask other people about, tell me about yourselves, or how long have you been married, or, just those poignant questions, you start to dive in a little bit more, and you can have a better assessment then of whether they're pro-marriage and if they're that positive type of impact that you want to have on yourself. And it's, you got to look. Sometimes it takes a little bit to look. And so you gotta look, and, if you have coworkers, that maybe you're positive about their marriage, maybe you don't know both spouses in that relationship, but if you as an individual in the relationship, or at least you have a few people surrounding you that are pro-marriage, it helps you also be more positive about yours. And my last one will be, if your family, if you struggle with family members who are not pro-marriage or very negative about it, different things.
Or negative about your spouse.
It's hard, but sometimes you have to set some boundaries, and you just have to filter a lot of that coming through.
That's a great point.
So
I remember specifically early in our marriage that we hung around with some pro-marriage couples. They were all young couples like us as well, and I remember all the guys getting together. It's kind of like you have that get together at someone's house, and the guys kind of separate from the gals, and the guys were off outside. I remember and we had these multiple times, these conversations, but this one particular time, I can picture it, and we all looked at each other and went, you know what? Divorce is not an option. Let's hold one another accountable that we're going to pour into our marriages. And the mantra with that group of guys was divorce is not an option. We are going to persevere, and we're going to do our part as husbands, and we're going to encourage a healthy marriage, and we're going to work hard at this because marriage is tough sometimes. And that was super encouraging, and that connects directly to surround yourself with someone that's going to look you in the eye and say, you know what? Divorce is not an option in this situation. Let me encourage you. How can I help you have a healthy marriage? And
Right.
Once again, I think that our listeners are intelligent enough and hear us well enough to know that we do not believe that divorce is shouldn't be considered when there's abuse, when there's addiction that's not being dealt with,
right.
when there is the type of neglect that would. So we understand that sometimes there are circumstances where it's insurmountable. We're not talking about that, and we know that our listeners are astute enough to know that when we say divorce is not an option, it means that the vast majority of marriages, they get in a rut of a bad way and direction, and they can turn things around, but not find an easy way out necessarily.
Right.
So the relationships you're in make a huge difference. I have
do.
to also say with this point, before we move to action point number 5, is I want to return back to our shout out to our church, our home church, and to encourage folks out there. We have found pro-marriage friends and accountability and encouragement. And that example I used when we were early in our marriage, that was actually from a context of our church environment. And so we also see that within our present situation as well. And that leads us to number 5 action point, which would be small changes make big differences.
Right.
So if you're headed in one direction, have faith in small actions that each day you do something different each day consistently over time. And if both of you are doing this, it will make a difference.
Right. And so some of those things are you got to have a way to connect with each other, right? And so you need to have a regular time of connection. And maybe you have a 5-minute connection every day at a specific time of your day when both of you are going to be without distraction. And during that connecting, it's just a quick, simple. It can be the business item if that's truly what you need to be, because we understand that there's different levels of the struggle, and it could be that you have allowed yourself to be struggling for so long that just doing one of these small things is about all you can do, and you can't even get to like reaching out for counseling yet or something because you've just gotten yourselves in a bad spot. So connecting in some way every day is great. And if you can connect and actually also take that time of connection to just share an appreciation or a compliment with each other, that's huge as well.
Yeah, daily compliments are huge, aren't they?
They are. And those appreciations and just being real about it and not there doesn't need to be any other dialogue about it. It's just a simple compliment or appreciation, and take your partner at face value for giving that to you.
Yeah, because a lot of times couples who are headed in a more negative direction and have gotten in a rut with that negativity, it's because they've given up truly appreciating their spouse.
Right.
And sometimes, honey, it takes a lot of work, doesn't it? Where
It
if
does.
you've gotten to a rut of not appreciating your partner and you're kind of like, I really don't see any positives in her, or I don't see positives in him.
Right.
And it's like sometimes you got to check yourself and say, you know what? I need to find positives in my
Right.
partner, and then verbalize that and work hard at appreciating. Because if you get yourself a negative headspace, yeah, you're going to feed that, and it's going to drag your relationship down. So open yourself up to being, number one, what caused me to be attracted in the first place, and number two, what are new things I've discovered that actually don't annoy me, but I'm actually
Yeah.
appreciative for.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, having a regular time of connecting, even if it's just for like a 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and then trying to find those compliments, appreciations for each other. If you are able to do, maybe your struggle hasn't been as bad, or you've reached out soon enough and you're seeking help, you're practicing some of the skills you're learning and things like that. Take time out. You've got to do something fun together.
Yes.
And you have to talk about what that is. And remember, it doesn't always have to be out of the house, and it doesn't always have to cost money. It
No.
doesn't always have to be extravagant and go somewhere, but sometimes just doing something fun together. Because like David just shared, these are the small changes. It's like if you're going to turn the ship around, the rudder on the bottom of the ship is a small piece of the ship. When you look at how large an actual cruise liner or boat is, and so you just got to start turning it just a little bit, and doing something fun together helps.
Yeah, from a recent conversation with a couple, this is a suggestion I'd put with that, and that is do fun things together, just the two of you.
Yes.
Because they're oftentimes the temptation is, well, we do fun things, but it's with other people. It's in
Right.
groups. And you know what?
Or it's as a family with your children.
Yeah. When you and
which we're not against any of those.
Yeah, when you and I get together with groups, we kind of go our own. We don't just. That's not time where we turn towards one another.
Right.
It's time to now make time having fun with groups, but
Absolutely.
it is not a substitute, because sometimes a couple can be struggling in a crowd, right? They can be like, and people don't even notice.
Right.
It's like, we never knew that you were struggling. Well, pull yourself away. Have that time where you're having fun together.
Right.
And then I would add to that one too, hun, that give of yourselves together to other people, and have a servant attitude. Here's the thing, folks. You've got to look outside yourselves. The thing that destroys marriages is selfishness and individualism. And that includes when, as a couple, you are together in this selfishness, individualism, and where you are only looking to your own personal needs as a couple, as individuals within the relationship, and you've forgotten, or you never did, practice this giving of yourselves and serving those outside of yourselves, but do it together. So as a couple, find a soup kitchen to work for together. Find a clothing where there's a clothing store that's given away. Like, you can go and help the needy. Go whatever that need is, whatever the project is for you, but do it together.
Serve Meals on Wheels.
Meals
go
on
do
Wheels.
It. Like,
go
I
clean
don't
up
know what it
clean
is.
up a park.
Right.
Do something civically together that you are practicing, but give of yourselves. Perfect opportunity, once again, going back to church. Hopefully you are connected with the church. If you aren't, get connected with one, and hopefully the church you're connected with, they serve the community. Find opportunities to serve the community. So, hey, let me run through these 5 together. Then I'll run them back through here, honey. No, action point number 1 is seek counseling. Action point number 2 is find a marriage coach.
And let me just pause and say,
Yeah.
when you seek the counseling, or you find a marriage coach, or you're doing both, practice what you're learning.
Yes.
You must do what you learn. You cannot just go in, sit on a couch, and walk out, and then be like, well, that didn't help.
Yeah.
Implement.
Implement it. You can't just walk in a gym,
No.
look at the equipment,
And go,
and expect that you're getting in
I
shape.
lost 5 pounds.
and
So,
and
yeah.
no, you didn't. Like walk in. The worst thing is if you walk in with a donut
Yeah.
and a Pepsi,
Right.
and it's like, and then you're like, oh, I was there.
Yeah.
It's like, no, do it.
Implement.
Action point number 3 is to discuss a marriage book or follow a podcast together, unified. In other words, find a resource that both of you can do together and discuss it together. Action point number 4 is surround yourself with couples that you want to be like. Find mentors or friends that have healthy marriages and you can connect with them. And action point number 5, make small changes and that will make a big difference. Do something.
Right. Hey, we really appreciate each of you taking time to join us this week. And we want to make sure that we send you out with our verse of the week. Our verse this week is found in Romans chapter 15, verse 7. It says, accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God.
That's very
Romans
good.
15:7.
That's good stuff. Good
Yep.
stuff. Hey, I want to make an announcement before we close up shop
Sure.
tonight. And this is the last episode for our 2021 season. You may be saying, hey, hold on a second. This is November, but we've run for 2021. And what we're going to do is take a break from podcasting. You may hear from us. Keep an eye out. And I know if you have subscribed on iTunes or
You'll get the notification.
whatever your platform, you'll
Yeah.
get the notification
Right.
if we do anything between now and 2022. The plan is to pick back up the season number 2, the 2022 season in January, where we'll hit some new topics at that time. And you may hear, like I said, a special greeting through the time there. In the meantime, check out our previous episodes. Find us on YouTube and on Facebook. And you can also find us at our website, which is oneanothermarriage.com. You can find us in those locations in the meantime. And as always, we're available if you're interested in coaching. Reach out to us. We'd love to be able to help. Or we can make recommendations for somewhere else, hopefully, for you to be able to get the help that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're also available if you give a review on one of our platforms, especially Apple Podcast. We read those, and so if you give a shout out that way. But please remember to subscribe, rate, review. If you have found any value in this content, remember to hit that share button and help other couples to be strengthened. And so, hey, thanks so much for joining us. And like David said, keep an eye out. And I'm sorry, did you have one more thing?
In the meantime, I do want to encourage, we want to encourage you out there, one another couples. You're a one another couple when you have this mutually beneficial, reciprocal relationship. We want to encourage you to love one another, serve one another, touch one another, encourage one another, have peace with one another.
Yes.
And our heart is that you are strengthened in your relationship so that you can have greater satisfaction and impact on the world around you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.